Okay, so I watched the FanFest keynote speech live. It was really interesting. I thought I'd just quickly summarize it for you here, so you don't have to watch through the whole thing, just sort of get the key takeaway. Now, there'll be the specific keynotes for each game tomorrow, so they'll be going into more depth, and if I watch another one, it'll probably just be the EVE one, maybe the Vanguard one as well, and I might do a quick summary of those too. Please make sure you stick around because they first mentioned the Cradle of War update and what it will be including. So I'll have that information for you in there too. So without further ado. So the core of the presentation, and it was sort of breadcrumb throughout, was this concept of EVE Forever, where EVE is, they're going to be planning to run it into this sort of long-term ecosystem. EVE Forever was first mentioned in 2010 when they were implementing EVE Valkyrie and Dust 514. We know how that turned out. But there was a massive emphasis on player retention and player recruitment. So how can they keep players engaged, and how can they stop them from, how they said it, falling out of the game, but instead falling in love with the game. By doing that, they're going to be evolving core gameplay mechanics and expanding the universe. So that's implementing Vanguard, the Binfire that is Frontier. There was some interesting mention of AI, not in what I would consider an evil use of AI, a pointless use of AI, but at least it's not evil. They did say they would be reserving all evil AI for Frontier, which, again, hate that. They're also looking at making Carbon, the engine that EVE and all the CCP games run in, open source, so that's an interesting thing. And they kept coming back to the idea of EVE Forever, and EVE is a living universe on a platform. It's not a game, EVE is the people who play it. They started off talking about the events, community, and legacy of the game. So they just mentioned Alliance. They summarised the Alliance tournament most recently with Tuskers winning that one, and tying the next one to the Amar and the Amar coronation. So that'll be interesting to see what that comes out with. This is also the first EVE Partner Awards, so there are over 2,000 nominations for 8 categories, with the Polaris Award going to someone with lifetime contribution. That's got to be either Cribber or Squiz. I'll be shocked if it's anyone else. And just mentioning again the Project Discovery milestone that we have as a community provided over 1 billion classifications of either for exoplanets or diseases. Plex for Good is back. 1.2 million has been raised overall, with 300k being donated in the first weeks of it coming back. It's now going to be permanently active, so you can donate whenever. And the charities are going to be supporting Our Player vs Cancer and the Icelandic Search and Rescue. And the EVE soundtrack, which me and my wife love, is coming in a new form. They're re-releasing it as a vinyl with new and old songs. I don't own a vinyl player, but I would buy a vinyl player for just this vinyl. Then they moved on to EVE Evolved, or EVE Evolved's evolution. How EVE is not the game that we imagine it to be, and that it's something that hasn't met its full potential yet, and they're looking to elevate that. Not just through visuals alone, they're going to focus on deeper gameplay systems, deeper and richer gameplay systems on top of the visuals, refreshing mechanics like they did in the Catalyst expansion, and having the phrase sort of elevation as a core design philosophy. So I expect that just means they're going to be yes-anding everything, or how can they bring it to the next level. So that'll be interesting. The next EVE Online expansion is going to build on that EVE Evolved evolution. So Cradle of War comes out June 9th. It's going to be focused on the Empire and Empire conflict. So we're going back to the sort of revamping faction warfare. Players are going to be able to freelance for any of the empires. This freelancing could influence leadership elections, just like the Galente event that just came up, and the outcomes for it. You can support in loads of different ways. They mentioned, was it through economic construction of something in, was it for an Amari? So rebuilding a trade hub that might have been destroyed, or working with research agents to develop new types of drones for the Galente. So it's not just fighting and holding sites. So moving on before that, moving on even further than just that. So they'll be implementing a new system called Theatres of War. Think of a theatre of war as sort of like a book with all of the military campaigns being chapters. Those chapters will be ran through, again, an evolution of the freelance missions for those specific empires doing certain jobs. The Theatre of War will be an interface that you can use to interact with that. And to help track your contributions, like an evolution of the agency tab or the agency window or mining ledger, stuff like that. They said that AWOXing is something they're still not happy with, and they want to make sure that they can do their best to remove that because it doesn't add fun for anyone. AWOXing, if you're not aware, is where you essentially team kill during faction warfare, so you get all the rewards. They also mentioned in passing a new way to repair standing, so that'll be interesting as well. Also, obviously, if you work for a faction, so any of the empires, you will pick up massive standings boosts for those guys as well as ranks. And because every game needs them, they'll be bringing in achievements, but also titles as well as new ships. So we're going to be getting Navy versions of the Algos, the Dragoon, the Talwar, and whatever the Caldari one is. I just can't remember it right now. They're also going to be getting, or rather there's now going to be a T2 version of carriers. They're calling it the Command Carrier. They emphasize that it's going to be really high mobility, but they'll also have extremely strong command bursts. It'll be interesting to see how that works, how that's implemented, and how it's different from the other command ships, and what high mobility looks like. Carriers can already do conduit jumps, so will it be a bonus to conduit jumps, or the capital MJDs, or will it be like a speed bonus to MWDs? What does high mobility look like? Maybe even a mini Titan jump bridge. That would be amazing too, I suppose. But that would sort of be antithetical to the other thing, or one of the other big things they mentioned, to limit movement around. They're also looking to try to add more recognition for logistics and non-combat roles for pilots, just about that whole concept of everyone is part of EVE and these pilots shouldn't be excluded from a lot of the content. Logi on kill mails. One last thing that's not on the slide as well, they said that Ansible X gates are changing. They're not going to negatively impact home defense, they said, but they're looking at force projection. So it'll be interesting to see how they tackle that without destroying everything. Everything is crossed. Very quickly on the Vanguard, it's not Dust 514, but the good parts of it are the parts that sound like Dust 514. So they're looking to polish the gameplay. It's leaving pre-alpha, going into alpha. The core gameplay loop is deploy, raid, loot, extract. I think survive somewhere in there as well. The parts that sound cool are the dropships, so being able to have equipment dropped in, or having enemy Mordu Legion elite AI units. They can come and fight you and call in stuff, or they'll just drop in one-man commandoing against you. Sounds interesting. Loads of different weapons being added, as well as melee combat being expanded with like Nova Knives and stuff. Extraction happens via upwell structures, which sounds cool, as opposed to just sort of like you doing the weird uplink before. What sounds really cool about it is that you walk into it and you get it sort of digitized in the same ways, like sort of in like Star Trek, where they get beamed straight back up. Except when you get beamed up, it's only the matter destructor, so it absorbs, it brings up everything inorganic and it eliminates everything organic. But again, hey, we're clones, so what's a little bit of blinding pain for all of that sweet loot? I mentioned war barges. Now, war barges were mentioned a lot in Dust 514, in how clones would get around the universe. So again, this is something they've mentioned before. Whether or not it comes to fruition, how they implement that, that'll be interesting. Then we've got the idea of linking the two universes. So again, this is all very dusty. So we'll see how that really does work out. And what that looks like, because the links weren't too much within EVE and Dust. So again, we'll see what Valkyrie looks like. They're looking at July the 7th as the release for the next activation window, and you'll be able to finally access it on Steam now. As sort of like an evolution of what was mentioned before, they're seeing EVE as no longer just being a game, but becoming a platform. That's where the Carbon engine comes in, and how everything can be sort of integrated. So there's a big push for cross-game integration. There's a partnership with Google DeepMind AI. It was interesting, a few of the things I said. I didn't watch the actual presentation that was all about it, but how they described it was AI has already been used to beat games before. So you've got Go, and the other example they used was chess. And just because AI beat the game was better than any other human didn't mean the game ended. So he didn't elaborate any further than that. But is that a suggestion that they'll be training DeepMind to play the game and see if it can, I don't know, win? But that's interesting. We'll see how that goes. That's what I mean by, as I mentioned earlier, like the non-evil use of AI. Like, what do you think they can do? Because it could be some interesting problem solving, but it could also be paving the road to Skynet. Interesting as well, they mentioned that Aura is powered by Gemini, which I knew it had something to do, some sort of AI stint to it nowadays, so you can have a chat with Aura to help you with game information, but just Google it, it's better, and it might be better information, or use Reddit, or use any of the many people who play on and post on YouTube. There was a bit of mention of Eve Frontier using AI agents to do some modding and hacking of the game client. I didn't really understand that. It sounded pretty boring, and the guy presenting it sounded boring and very extra and very cringe. The anything mentioned about Frontier, almost everything to silence. The one exception was modular ships. So they showed some cool modular ships. It'll be interesting to see what the time to penis is, how quickly someone turns a ship into a penis. I'm betting minutes, if not already been done. Frontier will be dead in a few years. The only thing that's keeping it alive is venture capital money. I just hope that it's separate enough from the rest of the game that it won't cause issues. I know that Eve or CCP recently lost a lot of money this year, but that was because of investment, so that was a good kind of losing money. They are making record earnings. One weird observation is throughout the whole presentation, it felt very spiritual. It felt like a bit of an awakening, especially for Hilmar as he came up. It was cool to learn about Icelandic Eddas, these sort of epic poems that tell stories, and hearing the Capsuleer Edda, very, very cool. But it just a lot of the in between the information presentations, they had someone come on and it just felt very poetic every time they did that, or they were mentioning the symbolism behind Eve. That was odd. I've never noticed that before. Is that something they've done before? And I'm just, I don't know, only mature enough now to be clocking into it. In summary, CCP is really doubling down on fixing onboarding and retention of players. So they really want them to stay, and they want them to fall in love with the game and not fall out of the game. Their wording specifically there. They think that the new region that they're introducing, the Atia region, I think it is, that will help with that. It'll be interesting to see what becomes of that and if it ends up being used really at all, but it'll be interesting to see whether or not it affects the markets within the game. I don't know, we'll see when it comes out. So revitalizing faction warfare and large-scale conflict, providing some sort of end-game content for people who aren't within soft space. That's an interesting concept. So will this large-scale conflict provide enough content for people who love the game but aren't able to dedicate enough time to soft space? But it needs to be worth it. There needs to be some sort of unique reward or amount of ISK that's given out. I'd rather it be unique rewards, because the ISK or LP is just unintuitive, boring, and just pouring ISK out to people is negative for the economic health of the game. Expanding Eve into a multi-product ecosystem, that's a big push as well that was really observed in the keynote today. This is the second time they've tried that. So Walking in Stations, Dust 514, Eve Valkyrie, all things that I really thought were cool and had a lot of potential, they abandoned, or they were implemented really poorly. This time around, there's no link to VR that is experimental. There's no link to a PS3 game that is trapped on the PS3, no matter how brilliant it was, especially when it was at the end of console life cycle. Then we also had walking in stations. That was just a cool thing that made you feel more immersed in the game. So we'll see what that evolution looks like and whether or not they bring any of those old things back. Vanguard looks promising, and it seems clear what they want to do with that. Frontier and the AI stuff just doesn't. It's interesting they're moving to a strong narrative push as well with the game. So Eve moving weirdly away from the sandbox aspect to maybe a little bit more sandbox light with the high-sec conflict that they're mentioning. I think that's a really cool direction. I want more lore. I want more stories. All in all, other than the strange sort of poeticism and the extreme cringe of the Frontier demo or Frontier keynote, I thought that was interesting. That got me hyped. I'm very much looking forward to the rest of the rest of FanFest and just the rest of this year. It all looks really good. All right, thank you very much for your time today. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and maybe you'll be lucky and I'll have a second video within a few days. Who knows?